we are used to seeing and hearing in an incident like this, Tom.
Courtney Cuby for us tonight. Courtney, we thank you. I want to bring in now Brian Alexander. He's an aviation attorney and military helicopter pilot. Brian, I want to first start with the pilots that we were hearing from Courtney there in the Blackhawk. According to Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, the helicopter crew had night vision goggles on. Talk to us about how this would help them and or maybe affect them as they were elevating and came into contact with that American Airlines jet.
Well, thank you, Tom. As some of your guests have pointed out, this is a very prescribed route of flight with several critical requirements, one of which is that they're talking to air traffic control as they transition through the route. They have to have their transponder on so air traffic control can paint them on the radar at all times. And in this case, if they're training a night flight, it can be done aided or unaided. Aided is with night vision goggles. The technology now, 40 years on from when I was flying that route, is much, much better. It's a significantly positive aid to the aviators. It should assist them in seeing all the objects, whether that's, a crane in the route of flight or other aircraft along the route or in the vicinity. So if they were conducting a training flight using night vision goggles, it should have helped rather than hurt in their ability to identify aircraft. I would suggest to you here that the possibility mentioned by you of him perhaps misidentifying the aircraft that was called out by air traffic control, again, too early to speculate, but a real possibility that that may have happened, having flown up and down in a similar congested environment along the river at night, a lot of lights coming out of the city of Alexandria. The possibility is a real one.
Can you speak to the air traffic control issue that under the FAA safety guidelines, one person can man both jobs, right? They can do both the helicopters and the planes. Usually there are two controllers, but sometimes with staffing, there's one controller. There was one controller last night. How difficult of a job is that with as much traffic as comes through Reagan National Airport?
That's a great question. So not only a lot of traffic coming through, but this is the couple hours of the day when everybody's coming in. It's kind of the rush hour at Reagan. And so that's a factor. The idea that you have one controller, as I understand it, may be handling both departures and approaches and then monitoring the route of flight of helicopter traffic coming through. That seems to me to be a little bit too much, or maybe even a lot too much in this particular circumstances. I think the FAA has already perhaps released a report talking about the lack of adequate staffing in the tower overall, and perhaps specific to this sector. On this evening, it may have been understaffed, and that may be important. I think the call out here by the air traffic controller, and my father was one, they're some of the unheralded heroes in our system. It's amazing what they've done for these decades to keep us safe. But in this case, I think the call out could have been more specific and certainly better to identify it to the helicopter crew.
Brian Alexander, we thank you for joining Top Story tonight. Your analysis has been incredibly helpful. I do want to turn to the major search and recovery operation underway in the Potomac River just behind us here, as there are still boats out there in the river.